Hey everybody, I guess we're going to talk about Hantavirus again, mostly because people keep asking me questions. So today I'm going to answer some of the most common questions I've been getting from media and from people in the general public. And I think this might be the last time that I talk publicly about Hantavirus, because we're moving on to other topics very soon, I anticipate. I could be wrong, but that's what I think is going to happen. So if you don't know, my name is Rewat Dionandan. I'm a professor and epidemiologist. And if you don't know what an epidemiologist is, Google is your friend. Okay, let's get to our first question. Let me see here. Can hantavirus mutate into a more contagious form? Well, the short answer is yes, it can. But the longer answer is, it can, but it probably won't. And the reason for that is, mutation depends on opportunity. And opportunity for things like viruses to evolve or mutate or become more diverse in what they offer the world is dependent upon how often they can infect somebody. And this is a rare disease in humans, so the opportunity for infection, and therefore the opportunities for mutation, are low. So I would assign this a low probability of mutation in a direction that leads to greater transmissibility and therefore greater threat to humans. Next question. What is the difference between quarantine and isolation? Nobody asked me that question. I added it myself because I'm kind of tired of media getting this wrong. Quarantine is what you do to people who have been exposed to a known infectious disease with a threat of transmission. These people don't have symptoms. You quarantine them and wait to see if they acquire symptoms. And if they don't acquire symptoms in the known incubation period, then you let them go. Isolation is what you do to people who are now cases, who are infected with the disease, who have symptoms, and who are a threat to transmit. And you isolate them until their cases resolve. And resolve means either you stop being contagious or you die. It's a brutal word, isn't it? So that's the difference between quarantine and isolation. First you quarantine, then you isolate. Next question. What if the people on the boat, that's the HV Mondius, is that the name of the boat? What if the people on the boat stepped into some rodent poop and are now walking onto airplanes? Is that a threat? It's a good question. It's a little complicated. So the threat from hantavirus comes from the aerosolized rodent excreta, the poop. So somehow has entered the air via being dried up and traveling on dust particles and things like that. You kind of need for it to be relatively fresh, because the virus will die after a certain period of time. So why this theoretically is a threat, it is highly unlikely, because the virus has to live long enough from wherever they acquired it, onto the running shoes, onto the boat, onto the taxi cab, onto the airplane, and so on. So these things are all about probability. There is no absolutes here. So the probability of this happening, I would assign extremely low number to. Next question. Can you get hantavirus from touching surfaces? In theory, yes. We call this fomite transmission. A fomite is a surface that you touch, that is a conduit between you and somebody else getting the disease. So imagine you've got a snotty nose from a cold, and you wipe your nose, and you got snot all over your hand, and you touch a doorknob, and somebody else comes along and touches that doorknob, and then touches their face, and gets the snot into their mucous membrane somehow. Ew. And they get infected. The doorknob, in that case, is a fomite. It's the intermediary that allow the transmission to take place. Can hantavirus be transmitted via fomites? In theory, yes. But that's not typical, and I'm not even sure if it's been observed. So what we're worried about is the aerosolized nature of transmission. So sweeping up some mouse poop, gets in the air, and that's how you get it. Or from somebody else, maybe you share the same bed, you're a close caregiver, you're sharing the same air really close up, someone's coughing on you. That's how it's typically transmitted. Next question. can rodents infect food or water? Yes, they can actually. Food or water that's been contaminated with rodent urine or feces can potentially transmit this virus. And that's one reason that we encourage people to clean their cabins and their sheds and their campsites, etc., and their food storage areas to prevent that from happening. Again, it's a low probability method of transmission, not as low as the other ones I mentioned. Next question. Don't the rodents die from hantavirus? They're the carriers after all. And the answer is typically no. So this virus is well adapted to its hosts. And these include mice and rats and deer mice and so on. And these carriers can carry the virus indefinitely, chronically, and not be affected themselves. Humans are an accidental host, and therefore we're not well adapted to it. And that's why we don't do well with infection. These viruses, don't want to kill us if they have any desire at all. They'd rather keep us alive and transmit that way. But again, we are not well adapted to live alongside them. So the answer is no. Rodents do not typically die from this. Next question. How long is the incubation period? The time between acquiring the disease and showing some kind of symptoms. It's between 1 and 8 weeks, which is pretty long. So that's one of the reasons that the official recommendation for observing someone who's been exposed is 42 days. That's between 6 and 8 weeks. Most cases will manifest between 2 and 4 weeks after exposure. Next question. Are older people more vulnerable? Well, possibly. Older people are typically more vulnerable to everything. But the evidence for this is pretty unclear. So the severity of hantavirus infection varies with a lot of things. Most strongly with the strength and intensity of the infection, of the exposure. So how much virus did you inhale when you first got it? That probably has more of an impact than your underlying age. But of course, any sort of underlying fragility or vulnerability is going to come into play as well. And I think people ask this question because they think, well, if I'm not an old person, I'm safe. No, you're not. Is hantavirus more dangerous than COVID? I like that question. So this leads into one of my favorite topics in infectious disease epidemiology, and that is the difference between population risk and individual risk. If you as an individual get something, how scary is it? Versus if a lot of people in your community get something, how scary is it? So COVID has a pre-vaccination infection fatality rate, that is the probability of dying, of around 1%, maybe a little less. And that's a controversial statement in some circles, but that's what the data suggests, a little under 1%. So that means if you get it, you had a 1% chance of dying before the vaccines were available. That's not scary for most people. If a lot of people get it, that's scary for society. That'll shut down your healthcare system. That will cripple entire economies. That's one of the reasons COVID was so scary, because it was so contagious and transmissible that it posed an existential threat to whole economies by virtue of its combination of not insubstantial fatality and high contagiousness. Hantavirus, on the other hand, has a very low probability of infecting a lot of people. But if you get it, it's scary. 30 to 40% chance of death, the New World variety. So again, is it worse than COVID? If you get it, it's absolutely worse than COVID. If you don't get it, then COVID is a lot worse because it's going to infect a lot more people and have a substantial impact on society and economy. Next question. How do I safely clean mouse droppings? Okay, so public health has some pretty clear guidance on how to clear mouse droppings if you live in a hantavirus endemic area. First, you got to ventilate the area for like half an hour to get rid of as much of the aerosolized particles as possible. Open windows, and so on. Number 2, wear gloves. You don't want to touch this stuff. Number 3, don't sweep or vacuum initially, because that's going to create more aerosolized particles floating around that you can inhale. Number 4, you want to spray the droppings with some sort of disinfectant or bleach Number 5, you let it soak for a little bit, get it wet. Number 5, you wipe it all up with paper towels, and of course you throw away those paper towels safely. And the last part, of course, is you wash your hands. Next question, does bleach kill hantavirus? Well, yes, it does. That's one of the reasons the previous question included in the answers that you try to disinfect the mouse droppings with some bleach or disinfectant. Again, this is only really relevant in a hantavirus endemic area like parts of Western Canada or parts of the USA west of the Mississippi, and definitely Argentina and Chile. Next question, should I vacuum rodent droppings? No, do not. So vacuuming or sweeping, again, will aerosolize these fecal particles, which is precisely what you do not want. So the rule is wet first, vacuum second. Get it wet so it can't get in the air. Next question. Are cabins and sheds dangerous? Well, we're talking here about hantavirus, not serial killers. And the answer is, well, it can be. Again, if you live in one of these endemic areas, and if your cabin has been closed up for a long time, it's poorly ventilated, or you've got visibly a lot of rodent poop available. So take the precautions I mentioned before. Next question, is camping risky? Well, ordinarily camping is a very low risk activity when it comes to this disease. High risk in other areas like bear attacks. But the risks increase if you are sleeping in some sort of shelter that is known to be rodent infested, if you're disturbing rodent nests of some kind, if you're cleaning some abandoned cabins before you go camping in them, or if you're storing your food improperly, and that might attract, the rodents that will then poop all over you. So let's focus now on workers, like construction workers. What precautions should workers take? I think they should focus on, number 1, rodent control. Number 2, ventilation. Ventilation is always a good idea for a lot of reasons. Number 3, wet cleaning. So don't dry clean, wet the surfaces first, then clean. Next, use your PPE, your gloves, and consider respiratory protection, like masks and so on. My dog is here bugging me. Yes, can I help you? No? Okay. Last question, my favorite question. How long is this crisis going to last? First of all, I'm not sure it is a crisis. It's just a story about an outbreak on a boat. And as I've been saying for the longest time, the people most at risk are the people on the boat. And I feel really badly for those individuals. Secondarily, the people secondly most at risk are the primary contacts of those people in their lives, like their spouses and their caregivers, the people they spend a lot of time with indoors. After that, everybody else has a vanishingly small risk. At this point, all the secondary infections we know about, and by the way, the primary infections, those are the people who got the disease from the rodent poop. The secondary infections are the people who got it from the primary infections. The tertiary infections are the ones who got it from the secondary infections. So far, all the secondary infections we know about are people on the boat. There are no tertiary infections that I know about. Right there, that tells me transmission has stopped into the community. It doesn't exist. Now, if this is wrong, if I'm wrong about that, well, we're going to have to reassess. So as I mentioned, the incubation period for this disease is between 1 and 8 weeks. So the boat left Argentina on April 1. It's been 6 weeks already. So the incubation for most of the people exposed has expired or is about to expire. And if you do the math accordingly and look at when the first exposure was for all the people involved, all the incubation periods are going to expire sometime in mid-June. And when that happens, the story is over as it pertains to this outbreak on the boat. And then we'll move on to some other topic, I'm sure. Hantavirus does not go away. I'm glad the world has learned about this disease. It's relevant. It is a high-impact disease in Asia. The Old World variety is problematic, which is why there is focus on vaccines there. The New World variety is scary. And one of the nice things about this story going a little bit viral, pun intended, is that now maybe there's a bit more incentive for the development of a vaccine. And yes, there is work ongoing for developing a vaccine against New World Hantavirus, but maybe more money will flow towards it now that it has some attention. Those are all the answers to the questions that I've got about Hantavirus. And if you want to watch the original video I made on this topic, it's here. I don't know how YouTube works. I'm old.